Here.
Michael Shaw. Here. Priscilla Benali.
Here.
Kevin Mitchell.
Here.
Thank you, John. We do have a quorum, and I'd like to call the meeting to order at this time. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, board members and those in the audience. At this time, I'd like to have a moment of silence for Barbara Stanley. You know, she was a good friend. I've known her for years, and she's always been an advocate for education, public education. So let's do a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. Board members, let's go down to item number 2.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we approve today's agenda, please.
I'll second. Oh.
Motion been made by Chris Mortensen to approve today's agenda, and second by Priscilla. Roll call, Joan.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Ms. Benali.
Yes.
Mr. Shaw.
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen.
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes. Thank you. There's no recognition, I guess. And going back to Barbara Stanley, you know, when I was very young, I used to started working there, worked there as a cook. So I used to flip hamburgers and all that, and that was the first place I got fired from a job. But anyway, let's go down to election of officers. We're starting a new fiscal year, and by law we have to elect new officers of the board, and I'd like to begin by opening nominations for the president of the school board.
Nominations of nominate Chris Mortensen for president of the school year 2022-2023.
Okay, the motion's been made by Michael Shaw to have Chris Mortensen as the president of the board. Is there a second?
No,
Okay, well, we don't need a second then. Okay. Any other nominations? If there's no nominations, I'd like to close nominations for that, and Chris Mortensen will become the board president by acclamation.
we need to vote.
Okay, let's vote on that before I say acclamation. So, roll call, Joan?
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Ms. Benali.
Yes.
Mr. Shaw.
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen.
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes. So we have a new board president. We'll trade gavels pretty soon.
We'll let you handle it the rest of the day. Mr. President, I'd like to nominate Mr. Schaff as the or Charles Long as the vice president, school board vice president, please.
Okay. Any other nomination? Not. Roll call, Joan.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Ms. Benali.
Yes.
Mr. Shaw.
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen.
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes. Okay. I guess I'll be in that position by acclamation. Thank you. Let's go down to the board secretary. Nominations are open.
Mr. President, I'd also like to nominate Mr. Schaaf to be the board secretary for the new school year, please.
Okay, Michael Schaaf has been nominated. Is there any other nominations? If not, let's do a roll call. Joan?
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Benali,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen,
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes. So Michael Schaaf is our secretary by acclamation. So we have new officers.
Go ahead. You keep doing it.
Yeah.
You're great.
Chris wants me to remain president. So that's it. But anyway, let's go down to approval of meeting minutes.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes for our regular meeting from June 13th, please.
Second.
Motion's been made and second. Motion's been made by Chris Mortensen and second by Michael Schaaf to approve our regular meeting minutes of June 13, 2022. Roll call, Joan.
Mr. Long, point of order. Are
Okay.
we supposed to switch, officers now? We did the election and nominations and votes.
I think Chris was saying chair this meeting, I guess. He was-
No problem. No, I mean, we can do that. I asked Mr. Long, just for the sake of efficiency, just to finish up the meeting. The last meeting is the president.
Okay, Priscilla?
You know, after a nomination and our vote, you know, we voted for him to run the meeting. So I think you should take your chair, sir.
Okay, we'll do it. Absolutely. Now I got the gavel.
Hey, Christine, so let's do this, you know, now that we have the 3 officers elected and all that. I guess let's do a vote on the election of officers. Roll call, Joan.
No? We already did.
We have the officers in place.
Okay.
However, Mr. Long will do his last duty as president at this meeting. Mr. Mortensen will begin August 1st in his new role.
Okay.
Is there a reason why, Joan? Because we elected him right now as officer.
It's just the
We've always
convers.
we've always done it that way. We exchanged it right when we elected officers.
It's, sorry.
President Long, members of the board, since Mr. Mortensen has been approved as the board president, then it would be up to him if he wants to delegate it or if he would want to continue with the meeting.
I'm delegating it for this meeting, please.
Okay, let's proceed then. We have a motion and second, a motion in place to approve the meeting minutes of June 13, 2022. Roll call, Joan.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Benali,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen,
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes. Thank you, board members. Let's go down to consent agenda items and what is the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve consent agenda items A, B, C, D, and E, 4A, 4B, 4C, 4D, 4E.
Okay, a motion's been made by Michael Schaaf to approve the consent agenda items. Is there a second?
Mr. Long, I'll second it, but I do have a question, please.
Okay, what's your question?
Under, for clarification and transparency's sake, on E, we do have our board member, Chris Mortensen, on, the resolution and for procurement services, and we did get, the documentation for this. And I just wanted to ask Giovanna, I know, it was explained to me that all of these would be, used, all these individuals that are on here, Giovanna? Not just him?
President,
Mortensen. President Mortensen.
oh, I'm sorry.
Or Vice President Long. I messed up too, sorry.
Vice President Long, members of the board, yes. Essentially, when there's a multiple award, and I did bring Catherine Chrysler, our CPO, to this meeting just in case there were any concerns. When there is a multiple award, the CPO will only designate that if there is enough work for all vendors. Otherwise, we would not provide a multiple award. And given our fleet size in this district, just due to the nature, the geographic nature of our district, all of these vendors will have lots of work.
Okay, I just wanted that for the record. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, and board members, Chris Mortensen will abstain in the consent agenda items. So, roll call, Joan. There's a standing motion on the floor. Roll call.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Benali,
Abstain?
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen,
Abstain.
Mr. Long.
Yes. We pass our consent agenda items. Board members, thank you very much. Let's go down to study circle. I don't think we have any public comment.
Do not.
Okay. Superintendent's report, Mike.
Vice President Long, members of the board, we have a lot of special guests here today, but first I want to invite up Ms. Montagno and Mr. Solon to the podium. We are always focused on safety and security of our school buildings, and so I felt it would be appropriate today to kind of give you an update on some of the activity that we've been doing in order to improve. We're going to be talking about some new things, some new technology, and as you know, we've already done a lot with improving the security of students and staff in our school sites already, and have spent millions, if not more than $10 million in recent years to improve security cameras, door access, video conferencing, along with fencing and other things for school sites to improve. But it's also important that we continually improve, and in order to do that, we have to stay with the times and also the experts in this field, and be able to learn from them, and also coordinate with those experts that are local, as our law enforcement and other safety entities in our community. One, make sure that we have a good partnership with them, because communication and those partnerships are critical, especially when there is a situation that's an emergency happening. We need to make sure that everybody, whether they're staff or students or our law enforcement, that we're all on the same page so that things go as smoothly as possible, because that also protects lives in those kinds of situations. And so I'm going to turn the time over to Ms. Montagno. We have a presentation for you on some of these different items, and they'll introduce our guests also. Thank you.
Vice President Long, members of the board, as Mr. Hyatt said, we started looking at a safety plan. We have a pretty solid plan in place, but there's always room for improvement. So that's what we want to talk about today. As we started planning, we wanted to make sure that Gallup McKinley County Schools have a uniform campus plan, and we respond to all hazards or any incidents at the school level. After review of our current plan and looking at different trends, we felt the need to implement a more focused best practice that is action-based, with a response that is communicated easily and efficiently with 5 actions. And Mr. Solon will talk about that in just a minute. One good thing about the plan that we're looking at today is it's already been adopted by McKinley County. Office of Emergency Management, law enforcement entities, all of the emergency response partners are all working together to implement this one action-based response. So with that, I'm going to let Mr. Solon talk about the plan a little bit.
Thank you. Vice President Long, members of the board. It's my first time speaking with you all. I'm excited. I want to take a moment and I want to recognize Mr. Matt Eubanks. He's the owner of our security, Red Rock Security that we contract with. Captain Lauren Milligan, New Mexico State Police. Adam Berry and Tim Berry, father and son. Adam Berry is the emergency manager for the county of McKinley, and his father Tim is the deputy fire chief for McKinley County. And a good friend of mine also, Mr. Douglas Watchman, on the corner down there. He's a coordinator for McKinley County Office of Emergency Management. He brings a ton of experience, formerly working with the Navajo Nation Office of Emergency Management, so I'm grateful that they're all here to support us. As Ms. Montano said, the I Love You Guys program, when you look at it, you think, is this a counseling service that we're doing or something of that nature? But it's not. A little backstory on I Love You Guys. It was founded in 2006 by a husband and wife whose daughter was killed in a tragic school shooting incident in Colorado. They came together and they said, what can we do? We know schools have a safety plan in place. We know law enforcement will respond. But is there something that we can do so that there's more uniformity? Folks are talking together regularly and everybody is speaking the same line of language when they're responding. And they came up with this in concert with law enforcement and emergency responders and EMS providers and firefighters and everybody across the board that responds when there's a critical incident. And with that, we have the finished product of I Love You Guys. This program that Ms. Montano is speaking of and that we are presenting on today is in over 30,000 schools. It has been taught to tens of thousands of emergency responders and emergency response organizations on uniformity, common language, common descriptors, where if a school administrator or a person in charge calls out one of 5 things, everybody knows what that is. And folks will be trained on how to respond and how to act in the school or outside the school. The 5 key concepts are hold, secure, lock down, evacuate, and shelter. And I've provided you all with some posters. Those are the same type of posters that are going to go into every one of our campuses, that are going to go home with kids, with their parents. And that's the wonderful thing about this implementation of this standardized response procedure is there is as much information going home to the public and the parents as there is to the students and staff in-house. And that's where the connection is really made. If the kids come home and say, oh, we were in a shelter today, or we were on a hold, Dad, Mom, parents know what it is. And another component of this training is also the fact that there's going to be an educational component to the students on the good and the bad texting and social media posts when an incident happens and things of that nature. So there are a lot of really great selling points to this program, but at the end of the day, everyone that is involved has the same expectations, they have the same levels of knowledge, and they have the same action and response during any type of a crisis. It could be a natural disaster, God forbid it could be a traumatic, life-threatening incident on campus, or it could be a traffic crash in front of the school where the entrance is blocked because of the traffic crash. These plans will be implemented, and all involved on that campus or in that school district will be able to respond. And I want to finish by saying that, again, this was created in 2006 by a mom and dad when they lost their daughter. And the last two text messages that she sent out, she sent a message out to the mom that said, "I love you guys," okay? And then she sent a message to the dad, "I love you guys." And so that's what I love you guys.
We're going to show just a little video clip of kind of what the program entails.
School safety has turned into my life's work. We have to make sure that when a kid is in our facility and in our care, that we are doing everything possible to keep that kid safe.
When there's an emergency in a school, it's all entities are going to be responding, and so we have to be on the same page and speak the same language so that we can be the most efficient in our responses and make our students and staff as safe as possible.
The work that the I Love You Guys Foundation is doing sets people up like me to do that work, and to do that work the best we possibly can. Standard Response Protocol was inspired by the shooting at Platte Canyon High School in 2006. At that time, we were using a crisis response manual that was around 72 pages. All of those 72 pages really came down to 5 distinct actions that you could take in the classrooms. It was lock down, lock out, shelter in place, and evacuate. We've since have now added protocols around hold, and we are going to be changing the lockout protocol to secure. And that was really where the concept of the Standard Response Protocol came from.
The Standard Response Protocol is a guide of emergency actions that school staff and teachers and students can use during emergency circumstances. They're able to provide resources that are vetted by experts from all over the country and throughout the world.
The origin and the development of the SRP has always had a home in evidence-based information. The intent of going out and talking to our law enforcement partners and our first responders and our teachers and our students was to develop the concepts around what works and why does it work. That at its core is evidence-based research. Unfortunately, as we continue to see acts of violence occur in our schools, and every time one of those happens, we learn something new from that around how to respond to crisis.
The I Love You Guys Foundation does a great job in making sure that their processes and their procedures stay current. The 2021 version, the term lockout has been changed to secure. I can tell you as a former law enforcement officer, that term was often confused with lockdown. Lockouts or a secure situation, as they've changed it to now, would occur on probably a daily basis throughout all the school districts in America. Police ask the school to close their doors and secure their perimeter because there's something going on in the community that has nothing to do with the school. A lockdown is a much more serious action to be taken. Usually it's because of a much more serious situation within the school itself. Because those two actions are so drastically different, we were looking for a change to the SRP.
If someone calls for a lockdown instead of a lockout, that's a much more distracting and stressful situation for our students and our staff.
You would see how language was confused. Teachers wouldn't know what they were talking about. Parents would be confused because they would hear about a lockout and they thought it was a really terrifying situation when really their kids weren't even impacted by it.
When you call for a lockdown, that means that there's an act of violence occurring inside your facility. But when you call for a lockdown, that is locks, lights, out of sight. In this building and all buildings, stop. For our protocols, the only way we can release that lockdown protocol is we have to have law enforcement agencies come to this building, get keys, and they go door to door and unlock every single classroom. That takes time out of our educational environment and out of our educational day, just because of the confusion between the terms lockout and lockdown. By moving to secure, our intent here is that we're going to eliminate that confusion.
The other change this year is one new action, hold. We could use that hold to say, hey, listen, we're not releasing you out to the hallways. Hold is a good intermediate action.
We had a situation where we had a student who was ill in the hallway and that needed medical attention from first responders. For us to be able to say, we are now in a hold, and for students and staff to understand when that bell rings, that you're going to stay put in your classroom is a huge thing for us. That is critical for us to be able to get first responders in, respond to the situation, and get first responders out. A drill it's a non-traumatic experience. It's about teaching the concepts of this is what you do, but you don't have to scare people to do that.
Drills are mastery of the basics. We're just trying to teach and reinforce behaviors that we want to exhibit during an emergency.
In an exercise, you bring in elements of reality that make that much more intense. On occasion, with your law enforcement partners, and oftentimes when school's out of session, in a summer, we might do something like that to train our first responders in law enforcement. They need that realism. Kids don't need to feel that. Kids just need to know this is exactly what I do. It's locks, lights, out of sight in a lockdown, and that doesn't have to be traumatic.
As a director of safety and security, the new SRP changes allow us to be more flexible. It gives us more options, more tools in the toolbox to change the language and to base the protocols off of information that's real time and situations that really occur. It's important.
This is something that has to continually evolve. We always have to improve to make it better, to make sure our kids are as safe as they can possibly be when they're in our schools. It's the right work at the right time.
So with that, the importance of the program, we feel as a district, we've talked a little bit about the training involved in this. We're looking at having a 2-day training where all of the principals would come, somebody from their safety teams at the school site, including everybody you see here, sitting here and their teams. So law enforcement will be there. We will have security, emergency management, where we're all together getting on the same page, as they mentioned, having the same vocabulary. So that's something, you know, we think would be a really good start at getting this implemented, and then follow-up trainings would be throughout the year with the school sites. That's where we feel this program is so powerful. And it just gives the same expectations of response for any situation that might happen at the school site. And at this time, I'd like to bring up Adam Berry. He has implemented this program with the city, and he can tell you a little bit about how it's working there.
Thank you. Thank you, Board, for allowing me to talk for just a second. So McKinley County, we have adopted the standard response protocol for our county facilities. We adopted it back into 2019. We started implementing it into 2019, beginning of 2020, then COVID struck, and we kind of lost our momentum. So we're trying to refocus and get it back in our facilities. But the idea is that we would have that common terminology in all of our county facilities, which, as you probably know, are scattered across the county, very similar to y'all's school campuses. So it takes time to train the staff and everything. We get everybody on the same page. And we're super excited that the school is moving forward with adopting the standard response protocol as well as the standard unification method. And that's going to provide that added layer of common terminology across all agencies across the county. I'm going to allow, you know, a school calls in or county facility calls in to Metro Dispatch, and they hear the term, you know, secure or lockdown. It'll give everybody a better understanding of what's actually going on at that facility, so the proper response can ensue to that facility to take care of whatever that situation might be. I first learned about the I Love You Guys Foundation in April of 2019, and everything that had to offer brought it back. And at that time, we had a school coordination group as part of our local emergency planning committee. Started bringing it up to then, and it's taken in from April of 2019 to now for the first school district to look at adopting it. So very exciting, and I thank y'all for considering this.
So as I said before, we are looking at improving all the safety in the schools right now. So our next part of the presentation, we're going to talk about another plan we want to put in place called RAVE.
Vice President Long and members of the board, I provided you with a packet on RAVE, 2-page bullet point, and I'm going to speak briefly on RAVE, and that bullet sheet should be able to answer some of the questions or directions of the brief presentation here. RAVE is the name of the company. It's not an acronym. The corporation that built the app, and it is a practical measure to be used and implemented for an additional level of safety for students and staff by increasing response time for a violent, dangerous, or a critical incident. And when I mean a layer of safety for students and staff alike, it's as simple as what it is an application on an Android or an iPhone or a tablet or a laptop computer, I believe, but where a staff member can hit that button, and it's basically a panic button, and it is going to announce to the building administrator and to key staff members on our Gallup McKinley County Schools dashboard that there is an incident, say we can use the Student Support Center, for example, here. There is an incident, a staff member, they will be identified, hit the button in the curriculum department, and then appropriately we can respond and make an assessment of what's going on there. And that's as simple as it is, and it increases timeliness other than somebody trying to, a teacher, for example, in a classroom that may be having a critical incident, or there may be a medical condition, so they may have collapsed, trying to get to a place where they can either yell for help or obtain help or send a student to the office for help. There's a button right there, and that teacher and staff member can push it. And it is automatically alerting key members of the school district that there is a critical incident at that campus, in that classroom. It drills down to within a 50-foot radius of each campus. And Reader's Digest on how it works is, say for Viamira High School, we create a geofence around the campus to include parking lots and all buildings, pertinent buildings, and that application works within that geofence. The building administrator is the overseer of that campus, and they will go in and they will input all of their staff members who will have access, a RAVE panic button access on their iPhone, Android, laptop, or tablet. And then there will be a setup based upon who it is and who the hierarchy is there. If that button is hit, it will be announced. Obviously, there's key members, so wherever it's hit on whatever 32 or 33 campuses of the school district, Mr. Hyatt will know about it, and his key staff will know about it. So is the building administrator for that specific building and other pertinent members, so that timely assessment and response can be made. The RAVE panic button is also, it will mesh with 911 centers. McKinley Metro does not have it yet. They don't have it in place, is the way I understand it, Adam. Yes, but it is not live yet. So that is a discussion that we want to have in the very near future as we keep moving forward with this application setup.
So, question, it's an app?
It's an application, yes.
So what are you doing with the areas that don't have reliable internet service that may need an emergency?
So it can be set up on a teacher's laptop that has the internet service through the district. So we think that will, they may have to use a tablet or something instead of their cell phone. So we think that'll work pretty well. At this point, we can, it is used in 60% of the districts in New Mexico, and it's approved by NMPED.
Is there any way we can test it at all sites?
We've done some testing with it, but yes, it will be tested at all sites.
Vice President Long, Ms. Benali, it's an added level of protection and be able to communicate. And so our school sites all have internet access. Now, obviously, that internet access goes down. That hinders everything. That's everywhere, no matter where we're located. And so this works on our system so that anybody would be able to communicate. So it's something that's available through the state. And so we're trying to capitalize on that because it is funded already. But again, I just want to make sure it's understood this is an added layer of communication. There is not something currently that we're aware of outside of maybe some sort of microwave or something else out there that we did look into everything also in addition to looking at this particular product through the state. There's just not a lot of availability for anything different than something that comes through Wi-Fi or through cell service.
So we also have a video clip that'll kind of give you an overview of it.
When an emergency strikes, seconds and minutes can mean the difference between life and death. Every 15 seconds that an active shooter has unrestricted access to more people, he will claim another victim. Or when someone goes into cardiac arrest and their heart stops beating, every 1 minute that passes without the initiation of CPR, there's a 10% decrease in survival. It goes without saying, rapid response is critical to saving lives in an emergency. Schools, businesses, healthcare, and government facilities experience emergencies of all types every day. If an emergency occurs at work, the Rave Panic Button smartphone app quickly connects you to 911 and at the same time sends an alert to your colleagues and any security personnel on campus. The app can be used during any type of crisis situation, such as an active shooter on campus or an incident requiring police, fire, or emergency medical services. How does the Rave Panic Button app work? During the initial setup, administrators are chosen for your facility and will enter information about the campus at www.smart911facility.com. They can enter facility details such as buildings, floor plans, and landlines, as well as employee names, email addresses, and mobile phone numbers. Once you've been entered into the system by an administrator, you can then download and register with the app. iPhone users will download from the Apple App Store and Android users from the Google Play Store. In the store, click Search, then type Rave Panic Button in the search bar. The app is intended to be used by all employees in a business, healthcare, or government environment. However, on a school campus, keep in mind that the app is only to be used by faculty and staff, not students. Now, let's say that you have downloaded the Panic Button app and an emergency situation occurs on campus. You can then press any of the 5 buttons on the home screen to be immediately connected to a 911 operator. At the same time that you are being connected to 911, an emergency alert is sent to all employees that need to be notified at your facility. For instance, if you are calling to report there is an active shooter on campus, all employees will receive the alert. However, if you are calling to report a medical emergency, only key administrators and staff with medical training will be notified. To learn more about the Rave Panic Button app, go to www.ravepanicbutton.com.
Quick question. Does this work? I mean, it's an app, so it works on cell service, right? Not just Wi-Fi.
Yes.
So anywhere you got cell service, it's going to work. Okay.
And that schematic right there is cited. Rave is supported by New Mexico PED. and we have a dedicated state implementation manager who we are working with directly as we begin this process of implementing RAVE with all of our campuses and administrators and faculty.
So just to summarize our safety goals for this year, of course we want to implement the I Love You Guys, start trainings with that. We are currently working on RAVE now, and I just want to mention we're also continuing with our ALICE trainings, and we've had really good success with that. We really appreciate the support from the Sheriff's Department on that. James Mariano, Billy Patovich, they're our two trainers that are working with the schools on that. So overall, we just want to improve, as Mr. Hyatt said, adding more layers to student, staff, and safety. Any other questions?
Ms. Montagno, I just want to make sure it was clear too, is that training is not just administrator level, it goes all the way down to student level, and so there's a whole process. There's the trainer,
Correct.
and then the trainer then is at the school sites, and they train staff and students.
Any questions, board members? Kevin?
The ALICE training is the actual active shooter training when there would be an active dangerous threat within the school campus. And Under Sheriff James Mariano is the lead instructor from the McKinley County Sheriff's Department, as well as Captain Billy Patovich from Gallup Police Department that provide that training. That is a structured training, and it meets all the New Mexico PED and national accreditations for active shooter response and training to staff members.
Okay, thank you. Now that you did go over that, I'm very aware of it, but I didn't know it was called ALICE.
And Mr. Mitchell, that's done every year in every school.
Yeah.
Mr. Vice President, I have a couple
Go
of
ahead.
quick questions. Number one, the rave training, it seems like it makes a lot of sense because, I mean, I was thinking about this when they were talking about with the standard response protocol, changing some of the terminology for those different things to eliminate like possible fire, false alarms or overreactions to things like that. And this rave, the rave app makes a lot of sense because then, it keeps more decision makers in the loop on what exactly is like a big emergency and what isn't. I mean, it seems like that's kind of been the source of some of our problems, is overreacting to, situations that may not have been as big of a deal. I mean, it's important to be cautious about everything, but sometimes that overreaction, as evidenced by changing this terminology, is more dangerous. One of the other questions I have, this all seems to be like on the reactive side, like what do we do if the situation occurs? Is there anything and if there's not, can we begin looking into it? Things to be proactive, and I know that there can be emergencies or situations that arise from people that aren't part of our GMCS family, whether students or staff, but I don't know if there's anything proactively that we can do to try to spot some of these things. I mean, if you look back at a lot of these school shootings, there are commonalities amongst every single one of them. Is there a way that we can begin to look for some of those commonalities to try to prevent some of these situations before they happen? And I know that that can get into some touchy subjects, but there's some mental health issues and and things like that, and those are things that we want to help people out with. Ultimately, we want to help people.
I agree 100% with you. I police officer for 30 years, so that was always the $1 million question: how to I think that the old adage is never the wrong adage, and that's if you see something, say something, bring it up. The FBI has a great tool out that they've been advertising the last 6 months since the end of the spring school years nationwide. Is they have the availability. They want to be notified when there are social media comments out, regardless of how harmful or harmless folks take it. They want to be. They have the software where they can go back in and start backtracking things. If you want to screenshot it and things of that nature, they continue doing that. So I mean, there's some tools that are out there, but I think at the end of the day, it's incumbent upon all of us as citizens and employees to, again, if you see something, say something. Take a minute to assess it and bring it to your supervisor and management of the company. It's never a wrong thing to do. But you're right, there's sensitivity and things of that nature, and I think there's the right way to go about doing it.
And also, President Mortensen, we actually do a host of things that are preventative already. They're just not necessarily seen maybe in the category of those reactive things that we're talking about today. We are obviously heavily involved in several things as far as mental health with students. But staff are trained in recognizing some of those things. It's not doesn't mean that there's not room for improvement. Even simply down to relationship building with students is a preventative measure. Communication with families that we have going on through whether it's parent-teacher conferences or other means. There's a long list of things that we do that not only help students be able to feel safe and be ready to learn, but there's almost a dual purpose in that. It helps us understand those families and those students and what's happening in their lives to some extent, where we are in a position where we as staff members can potentially recognize behaviors. It's not necessarily just for students, also for other staff, because there's lots of threats out there in the world, and so even though you may not see those necessarily as a direct preventative measure, there are several things that we do that do offer us another level of protection that are preventative.
Vice President Long, I have several questions.
Go ahead, Priscilla.
I'm thankful for the question Mr. Mortensen asked, because I know at one point in one of our meetings, there was talk about a specialist that dealt with active shooting, and he would tour the facilities to see where there's a potential risk. And he made several suggestions, and I don't know if that was something that was going to be done, if it was fulfilled, and if we ever received a report on that. But they're supposed to do a walkthrough, and I can't think of the name of who this person was. But even in our new schools that are being built, we suggested the same thing, that they would review and look at the diagrams to see if we needed to implement anything else for safety protocols to keep our children safe. So I don't know if anybody knows the answer to that one. And as we've all seen and heard, students talk among each other, and I don't know if there's any way we can get anonymous, or maybe not a student reporting system, because if they hear something among each other of what we've heard in different reports of school shootings, they told a friend, but the friend didn't know where to turn to get help. So I don't know. Yes, we do have rave. It seemed like they said no kids. So, is there a child version or something that we can start to look for, that we can have students report? what maybe friends are saying, or even parents or family members or whoever is saying. My next question is, when and where are you going to start pulling in Navajo PD and or sheriff? I don't know if we're the sheriff. I see state, but those are the two main ones that respond in the rural areas, and I think we need a training for them or a presentation for them that as Gallup McKinley County schools we are implementing this, and I don't know if they're at the table with you guys. And I think if there's a training coming up as a board member, I think we need to attend that with you guys, because even the lockdowns that have happened in our schools, we start getting the phone calls, and we're like, okay, Mike, what's going on? This parent just called, and I think we need to know the safety protocols, even now. What's implemented now? What happens, God forbid, if there's a shooting or something happens at our school, what is the procedure, so we know as board members, okay, parents, just hold on. This is the protocol. This is the level we're at. They're clearing the building, or they're making sure everybody's okay, and then you're able to pick up your students at the designated pickup place or something. I don't know if we can get that kind of information. And Mike, you said something about this is something that PED is providing, so we're not paying for this, or are we paying for this safety implementation of I love you guys, and rave. And it did mention, you guys did mention that it's going to administration, and then, so right now, Ms. Montano, is it just the top people that are getting trained for now, and then you're going to go into everybody else at the school? Is it just administration? Because I want that clarification too. If everybody in the school, even coaches, are going to get trained on this. So those are my questions for now.
Well,
And one more.
You
How
can go
often?
first, then I'll add in the rest of the answers.
How often will the drills take place?
Ms. Benali, members of the board. So I'll start with, I'm not sure your first question talked about going in and looking at the schools to see. The only time I remember is when we were talking about cameras, which I did want to hit on just a little bit. New cameras, security cameras are being installed in our schools. And that will give us another layer, again, of security where we can see what's happening. It gives us better clarity. More places we're able to view. So that's going on, and I know we did have a walkthrough on where to place those through on certain areas. So that may be something you were talking about. Mr. Hyatt may know of other things.
We also do our own walkthroughs continually of school sites. But I think you may be referring to, I can't remember if we had NMSHA come out and do a risk assessment or a safety inspection of the schools. I have to double check on that. It's been a little while since that happened, if it did. But we do compile all that information. So when we're designing schools, like you mentioned, we're looking at that. We also assessed our own schools because, and I think this was during the time we were referencing, because we were looking to purchase and spend money from the state on safety. And that's how we came up with the plan with respect to like what schools needed more fencing.
Yeah.
And
I think it was one-way
there's cameras
entrance,
and one of
one-way
that's
out.
yeah, the one way, and that's why we currently have that at all schools, was because of that. So we have the video conferencing. When a person walks up to the school, they can only get in through one door. They have to be buzzed in, and that's what came with that assessment originally, from what I remember. So we continually have done that even since then, and so we actually do automatic walkthroughs where people don't know. So we've had people go into buildings recently and had somebody go into a building and just walk through to see if anybody would stop them. They were let into the front door, but then let to go down the hall just to see what the response was from the school. So we're doing checks in different ways to assess readiness. Wanna go on? Let me tackle them all, and then you can do it. Just like so, I wrote them all down.
Can I go ahead and add a couple questions? I just have
Sure.
two, and then that
Let's
way you
make
can
it
just hit
7
them
and
all
8.
together.
Sure.
Okay, first one is I'm gonna address. You mentioned cameras. So with the new cameras that are going in, are they gonna be able to alert an administrator that there are people in a building or wherever, so we don't have somebody in there for hours doing whatever they want and nobody's notified? Will these cameras be alerting somebody?
Motion.
Motion or, and then also, what plans do we have? I know Priscilla touched on it, for our parents as far as notification, to let them know when the situation is going on at a school, so they're not calling board members and yelling at us saying we're not doing our jobs and their kids are in danger, and the main place this comes from is the kids themselves. They start calling their parents crying and screaming, and their parents are thinking we're doing nothing. So just what are we doing for the parents?
All right, I'll add that to 7 and 8. All right, so number 2, I think you were talking about a reporting system for the students, and we can look at that, Ms. Benali. I think RAVE may have a component of that, but we'll double check. That has different levels of participation, because there's some levels that are more administrative focused, but we'll also look at the students part of that. With respect to Mr. Sullivan, maybe I'll talk about your conversations, because I know that we reach out and we work with every first responder agency that we can. Mr. Sullivan, we talk a little bit about your communications with the Navajo Nation Police Department.
Yes, we have regular communications, specifically with the McKinley County Sheriff's Department and Under Sheriff James Mariano. They are our primary contact for law enforcement response, and Navajo Police with Chief Darrell Noon. Both entities were invited to this meeting today. Chief Noon was unable to attend, and he did not have a subordinate commander to send to the meeting today. And Under Sheriff Mariano actually is teaching ALICE training to the Durango School District in Colorado right now. So, but they are our regular contacts, and I've colleagues with both of them, colleagues with the gentleman here, and we have regular communication. There's no hindrance in communication. It's a good two-way communication.
The next question was regarding how do people know about this? Well, that's one of the reasons. This is an area that we continually need to improve in, is how do we train and make sure that everybody on campus, also includes parents, make sure they're aware of what the protocol is in emergency situations. And we have current plans. It's required actually by the state that we have a safety plan for every school. So all of that is in place. We currently have a system that we go by that's a certain protocol, but we found that this was better. And so this is just an improvement upon what we already have as far as what's considered, when is a lockdown called, for example, versus when is what we call currently a shelter in place, which is more of a, I believe, secure on this. And so it's a different language. But with this particular company, it provides the resources for us so that we can use those it helps us better inform. Instead of us creating our own standard system that the community can understand and we can post and people can know about it. And we'll have to talk a little bit more about what's posted and what's not, because sometimes there's things that we don't post. For example, the safety plans for schools, we don't post those publicly because then somebody knows that may potentially want to do harm or some other reason to go to our campuses. You don't want them to know all those plans because that opens you up as further risk potentially. With respect to that training, again, I mentioned before you asked the question, the training actually goes down to the student level. But one of the things we haven't talked about is making sure, and I did a little bit a second ago, is making sure that we inform parents so that they're aware more clearly of what the protocol are. So when they hear one of these commands or one of these things on the radio, or whether we can put that out in some form or fashion, they know what's happening at the school, and they know that it's not an active shooter per se or an imminent threat. It may be a situation where there may be a health incident on the campus where the students are just kept in the classroom while EMTs or others tend to have student or staff member. So the training is not just administrative level. As far as paying for RAVE, the state pays for it, but Ms. Montagno, is there any components that we're adding on to it, or is this, are we taking, or did the state pay for all of it?
At this point, the state is paying for everything.
So if at some point they don't offer funding for that, obviously they're flush with money right now. But if we're committed, as long as everything works out well with this particular piece of software, we'd come to the board for continued permission to pay for the service if we need to. Or if there's a better one out there. And maybe there is something out there, Ms. Benali, that we can add on to or replace in place of that uses something other than Wi-Fi or cellular, but right now it's the most predominant way of communicating outside of maybe some radio signal or something else like that. We still also have landlines in our schools also that can also go out from time to time. The next one, as far as drills, the state actually requires certain numbers of drills for different things, whether it's a fire drill, or evacuation drill, or a safety drill, such as what we're talking about here today with respect to maybe an active shooter type thing situation. And so we can get you a list of all those. We actually do more than the state requirement as far as safety inspections and making sure that our schools are prepared. But that doesn't mean that we don't have room to improve. The seventh one, Mr. Mitchell, we do have an improved camera system. You just approved the funding for that recently for us to upgrade those cameras so they're even better than they were before. And with that system, that technology, it actually provides a bunch of extra tools for us that also add level of protection for our students and staff. And one of those things is our new cameras will have facial recognition, and so it can actually follow somebody where they're going in the building. That access to those cameras is no longer at a station with a computer. We actually will have access to phones. And so, for example, if somebody is home at night and there's motion detected in the school, a principal could be notified of that and be able to watch the cameras instantly. So that's a better level of notification. And also that what's helpful with that, especially in emergency situations, we can grant that access to first responders so they can also see what's going on in the building. Or if they don't have to actually come to us, we can grant them permission to see what's going on. So if the police are on the way to a school to see about a breaking and entering situation, we could provide them access to those cameras. And so there's a host of things that come with that. We even have one that the cameras on the outside of the schools, we actually be able to recognize license plates from a distance. And so they're much more high-tech, a much higher resolution than we had prior. So there's a few things about that, Mr. Mitchell. And lastly, you talked about, I think that was the RAVE access also. Did I answer all your questions, Mr. Mitchell and Ms. Benali? And if you have any further questions on those.
I do. I know my daughter, my son set up our cameras at our house to where he talks to me. Like, he says, "Mom, you're finally getting home," or something through the camera. And do some of our cameras do that? I mean, it's kind of, it scares the crap out of the first time it scared me the first time he did that because I didn't know cameras could do that. He saw me driving up, and I guess there's a motion that detects it on his app, on his phone. It's supposed to be my phone, but he set up on his phone, and then he's like, "Hi, Mom, you're finally coming home," and I'm like, and here with the cameras. But I think that would be cool to have in our buildings. Like if someone's there late at night, they could say, "You better leave, cops are on the way," or something. Or "You better not, they better not break in because the cops are called."
Ms. Benali, there is that technology. We did not have that installed, but that's something that we could definitely look at. That technology is readily available. A lot of homes have different ring bell, doorbell systems that access. But there has been some talk about it. There has been talk about communication, especially in the recent shooting situation that happened in Texas. Access to those students through video or through sound would have been highly valuable in that situation. The first responders there would have had more information to make decisions. And so that's something that we may want to consider as a school district. What level do we want to go to? Do we want to better cover the entire school with video? And then also, whether that's a speaker system in classrooms or in hallways or something loud enough that you can hear in multiple areas, so you don't have to have a microphone in every single area. That's something that we could definitely look into.
And I think since you brought the Texas shooting, I would really appreciate continuing to do the random checks of, I think it was Sheriff Mariano that came in through one of the back doors, or maybe it was you that went through one of the high schools and just came in through the back door because it was propped open. Or maybe it was Sheriff Mariano. Somebody did that. And exactly like what happened with Texas, you know, I mean, they propped open that door and he was able to get in. And so I don't know if we can continue those kind of monitoring to make sure surprise, not unannounced kind of situations. And since we have all these law enforcements here, the other question doesn't pertain to school shooting or anything like that, but I want to appreciate individuals that have used the drug dogs in our school. That continues to be an issue of drugs in our school, and I don't know if we still have programs like the DARE that we start helping our children at a younger age recognize how drugs can destroy, alcohol can destroy. But those were the two things I also wanted to mention. If we can continue doing the drug dogs and then also implementing something with drugs, drug programs, and getting those drugs out of our schools.
Just a quick comment, and we'll go on. But I failed to mention that we're also installing smoke/vape detectors in all of our bathrooms. So that's one additional thing that we're adding with the cameras. Technology's become quite pretty proficient in a lot of things and helping us recognize things. But also, I would agree that there's more work that can be done with respect to prevention, especially with the legalization of marijuana and those types of things in New Mexico. And with the pandemic coupled with that, we definitely have had a lot more issues with respect to drug use, vape use, and those negative behaviors.
I have one more question. I know that Mr. Mariano, he I don't know if any of the real intense training took place this past year, because I didn't hear about it, where they actually went into the schools and did a whole pretend scene, and I can't think of what it was actually called, but where they go in there and they put up a whole scene and have certain teachers in there and go in there with guns and make it look like it's a real thing. I mean, did we do any of those this year?
Mr. Mitchell, we definitely don't do that when students are there.
No, I mean
we did. That's not one of the required drills that we do with all the schools, but I believe there was some of that done to some extent, as far as like a real life type situation.
Yeah.
I believe it was the Rue Elementary that did one. I think after everybody is trained at a level 1, I'm just going to throw out there, level 1, they will come back and do a more in-depth training, like what you mentioned. And the Rue Elementary, now that was this past year or the year before, I'm not sure.
It was during the
He said it was
pandemic, I believe.
Very powerful.
Yeah, because I know they were doing them all over. They even did the hospitals, and they were doing the mock thing with taking them down to the airport or whatever, going to that extent. And then the other thing is, with the marijuana being legalized and everything, I don't know, we're going to have to really do something about trying to control cookies, gummies, and any of that stuff that are going to be coming into our schools. Because I know we did already have some problems towards the end of the school year with, them just passing the gummies around on the bus, and then by the time the kids get to the school, they're completely out of it. And they're dangerous because they don't know how many they can eat or how many not. I don't know.
Thank you for the question. Appreciate it.
Mr. Long, I just want to say thank you to all our first responders and our sheriff and our Navajo PD and our state police and everybody that continues to keep our students safe. We really appreciate the collaboration and partnerships we have with you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Solon, Kidon, Shat. Thank you. With that, board members, notices and communications, you can put that in your calendar. And then we go down to new business A, which is the approval of our strategic plans, Elevate 2025. I believe you got copies of it. And Mike?
Correct. Vice President Long, as you know, we did some sessions and some work with respect to looking at revisions since our strategic plan period of time that we had implemented 3+ years ago was time for some looking back and seeing if there's things that were good that we accomplished, things that we need to improve in, and other items that we may want to tackle with respect to our strategic plan. But I wanted to first thank the school board for their efforts and their focus in making sure that the school district does have a strategic plan. Many districts don't have a strategic plan. Some districts may have a strategic plan, but doesn't go quite into the depth and lay out the expectations as much as ours does. And that helps students, staff, parents, the community stay focused on those things that you know from your constituents that are valuable to them and that we need to work on. And so I wanted to do a brief recap of Elevate 2022 to kind of give you some information that you may already know. This is probably more for the public, but areas that we excelled in, areas that went well, and also areas that we may want to continue looking at, and areas that we need to relook at how we do the metrics or how we do the evaluation of our success or not in those areas. And so before I go through Elevate 2025, what our proposal is for you from your input, I want to just briefly go over some of those successes and things that we were able to do in the past 3 years. With respect to improving student academic achievement, one of the goal set was essentially to stay in the top 10 or top 3 of the top 10 largest school districts in the state, because those are comparable schools for us as far as proficiency growth. And as you know, towards the end, in 2019, we were actually exceeding the state. We were #1 in proficiency growth in the state of New Mexico, out of the top 10, and actually way more than the top 10. But that's what we were evaluating ourselves against. And you'll see that we feel that we need to continue that. Assessments and things have changed in New Mexico. The pandemic changed the landscape of assessment and what was happening during that time. And as a result of that, there was no assessment during the pandemic as far as state assessment for us to continually gauge our success or not on. But when we left and the pandemic started, we were excelling. We were within about a year or more, or maybe a little bit more than a year of exceeding the state proficiency rates for reading, for example. And so there was a lot of growth, more growth than any other district that I was able to find for that period of time. Since the pandemic has happened, and since there's no assessment data for that, and that there's new assessments being put in play in New Mexico, for example, the SAT, which was just given for the first time recently, there are new baselines that need to be set, and we'll talk about that in a minute, so that we can gauge our performance of our students moving forward. Also, with respect to graduation rate, we actually were behind the state average in graduation rate, and this last few years, we exceeded the state graduation rate. We are concerned about that one, though, just because of the pandemic and the effect it had on our communities and our students. And also with respect, we're worried about that because of the attendance rate also. Our attendance rate, you'll see, as you know, has dropped significantly this last year, which we're very, very concerned about. The effects of COVID, people being out due to COVID, students that weren't quite in the same mode of going to school, and parents having their students go to school in some cases as much in the past. And so that's an area of focus that we want to continually work on. Communications, we drastically improved our communications with chapters, with the community through social media and other advertisements. We went from 0 to, I'd say, hero as far as our communication. It was a big push by the school board, and we appreciate you for pushing us in that direction because it's valuable to our community. Recruitment was another huge success for us. We had approximately an average of a teacher staying around 3 years, 2.5 to 3 years at a time, and then we'd rotate through teachers. We're up to about a 7 to 8 year stint for teachers as of right now, on average, a teacher staying in the district. And so there has been drastic improvement with retention efforts by the school district, and so we feel that we've done very well. It's what we do now as far as advertising and recruiting, and we just need to continually improve in that area, evaluations, those types of things, so we have the highest quality individuals teaching our students. So we appreciate those who have stayed with us that do such a great job. Improving the physical learning environment is an area that we still need to improve in. We had some areas in technology we did really well, but with respect to maintenance, we had some poor data that we are going to need to reassess and reset baselines for that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We also did very well in increasing partnerships. We exceeded our goals, and that's just become something that we do. We're constantly looking for more people to partner with, more entities to partner with to service our students and to help us improve the academic situation for them. As far as parent-teacher conferences and engagement with parents, we did a significant improvement, but you're also going to see, especially during the pandemic, was our greatest parent-teacher conference rates ever that I can remember, because we gave more opportunities for parents to participate with those conferences, whether it was online or in person or however they chose to do that. And so we want to continue those efforts to give parents more options about meeting with teachers and staff about their students' education. Lastly, two things I just want to mention was we did improve and included culturally relevant material and resources and curriculum for all of our grade levels and courses. So that was a huge accomplishment for our district. Took a lot of time, effort, but that cultural relevance is valuable. And lastly, career pathways is one of your goals. We're asking you that you continue with the 4 goals that you had, and you also made mention of that in our strategic planning session. But we wanted to make sure that we continually stay focused on career pathways, ensuring that students are prepared not only for graduation, but for their career and life goals. And so we want to continue to make that a part of Elevate 2025. Going on to Elevate 25, has it on the wall for the public, and you also have a copy of it. We narrowed our focus a little bit, and again, this isn't all-encompassing. There are lots of things happening in the district to help improve, but these are the focus areas, the focus objectives that we're asking you to approve, to narrow in on, to help us continually improve. And so I mentioned academic improvement, achievement, keeping that one consistent with what it was. Once we have baselines set, we'll be able to set better targets and see how we're doing in comparison to other school districts and other students in the state. But with the assessments changing, we need to get, we're going to have to see this October is when the last of the test results come out from this spring's testing session from the state. And number 2, attendance is a huge concern. We have the worst attendance rates this last year that we've ever seen. It is a big concern if students are not in school. They're missing opportunities, and so we're asking for this objective so that we can do a huge push. Even if you didn't approve this, we'd still be working very hard to educate the public, to promote attendance, to incentivize attendance, and to throw as much as we can at it to help students be in school. With hopefully the pandemic and the health situation subsides, so we can, without physical ailment and other concerns with health, students can be in school more easily. Graduation rates, we want to continue to focus on that and improving that. We are concerned, again, because of attendance, that graduation rates may suffer in kind, and so we want to make sure that we continue focusing on those areas to make sure students are graduating in 4 years and not 5 years as much as possible. Career pathways is a big focus. We are not done yet. Although we've accomplished a lot even in the middle of a pandemic, we still have more work to do, especially with internships that we've started. We want to grow that so that we can make sure that students are participating in some of the careers, learning the skills they need to be successful workers, and successful in their career desires and college career goals. Number 5, actually, Wade, I apologize. I have my team help me with this one a little bit, so I'm going to invite them up. I skipped over Wade on number 2. He was going to talk about that. But I told them as soon as an item comes up, they're supposed to jump up to the microphone. So we're learning. But Wade, if you wouldn't mind, if you touch on number 5, and then I'll take on number 6.
So number 5 is an improvement to our Heritage Language Program. What we're attempting to do is set up 3-week assessments based on grade levels, so kindergarten every 3 weeks, first grade every 3 weeks. Currently, the standards are the exact same from kindergarten to 3rd grade, from 4th grade to 8th grade. and we need to differentiate that a little bit so the heritage language teachers understand what does it look like in kindergarten versus third grade, that exact same standard, but also assess to make sure we are moving our students, that we're actually gaining some from all this work we're doing in the classroom. We've been doing it for 10 years, and right now our Dene language proficiency assessment is still less than 1%. I know we can do better than that. And so this goal is literally looking at how to get that program more accessible, being able to see whether it's working or not, and being able to make changes based on the data we get from those assessments. We're right now looking at an outside vendor that speaks. We haven't been lucky in that, but looking for an outside vendor to help us design those that has a good understanding of the Navajo language and the history behind the language. But that's our intention, is to put a little bit of accountability into that program to ensure students are moving.
Question with that one, Wayne. You know, I've been on the board, what, 12 years now? And that percentage has never changed. I mean, seems like there's no accomplishments as far as the language, Navajo language. I don't know what it's gonna take. You know, now you're saying you're trying to look for an outside source. And I keep saying, have you guys gone back to the teachers?
And we are going back to them as well, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that should have been done a long time ago. Those teachers know what needs to be taught and how it should be taught, but they're not doing it because they're following what they're being told.
Mr. Mitchell, I just want to clarify a little bit on this, because I do understand what you're saying, and the success needs to be greater. And it's a partnership. It's not just the school district, it's the community, it's the Navajo Nation, and a lot of people needing to work together to improve. And this specific item is not, it's not that we don't utilize teachers to help do that, but we do have a lot of teachers that are new, or were not trained with respect to curriculum and also assessment. And so it's not so much that we're going out to an outside vendor to get all of our information, but we do know that we need to create good assessments so we can track growth. Right now it happens, one time a year. We need to do a better job at tracking it continually so we can see where the improvements are, so we can be working on it continually and not waiting until later on before we assess. And that's the way the system was before. And so I just wanted to make sure that clarification. This is to help us improve so we can see improvement as we move forward, and not just in long periods of time before we know where we're at. And so that's why we need to get this done, because currently the assessment that was in place is not adequate enough for us to gauge that as students are moving through the grade levels. And so that's the purpose of this, so we can set true baseline scores so that we can gauge improvement, not year to year, but every 3 weeks to every 3 weeks, or every week to every week. And so it's very similar to the way we do curriculum currently, as far as how we assess that. We need to do a better job of that with respect to heritage language. This is, again, not just for Navajo language, but it's also for Spanish and potentially others. So.
And Zuni language as well.
Yeah, and Zuni language.
That's what I was going to ask. Are we providing these same grade level assessments in other areas of language, like Spanish and Zuni?
Our hope is to do that, yes.
Okay.
But right now, our big gap is the Navajo language.
Are we fully staffed now? Do we have a language culture teacher in each school?
Yes, ma'am.
This is I just want to applaud that, because it's the first time ever that since I've been here, and probably before that, since heritage language was in the schools, is that we're completely staffed. So.
And so how many new teachers got on board?
I can tell you there's 33 right now. I could not tell you how many are new right now.
There was a huge retention rate due to the raise increases, and so we didn't have a lot to find, but we were always still at least a few to 6 short.
Yeah.
And this is the first year, right here, 1st of July, where we're already filled, so that's exciting.
And Mr. Hyatt, we still have the internship program, which is fully functioning, which in case somebody leaves, we have somebody in the pipeline to take that position. So we are in good shape in that area.
Or subs.
Yes.
Okay. Exciting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 6, improved parent engagement. As I mentioned, we had some huge increases in parent conference attendance, but we think we can do better. And what we're looking at is actually requiring 100% of our parents, or contact from our schools to our parents twice each year. That's one of the goals we'd like to set. And providing a little bit longer time frame and more opportunities in different ways in which teachers and schools can communicate with parents to make sure that those conversations are happening. We want to be able to accommodate parents as they need. They have busy lives, and there's sometimes our times don't always line up with their times of when they can meet, and we want to be more accommodating like we were during the pandemic. And so that's one of the things that we want to focus on.
Question.
Yes.
With that, I know we have our, right now we have, the setup where the parents can get online and check on their student or check in with the teacher. What is our actual percentage that our parents are doing that? What's the percentage of parents that actually do that?
Actually, we can get the data for you specific, but you're talking about students logging into the grading system to check on grades that you're asking about?
Yeah, and then what other systems we have for our parents to communicate. What I would like to know what the percentages of our parents that are actually doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, we can definitely get that for you. Another thing that we're going to be doing behind the scenes that is not on the strategic plan is data collection. We are looking at better ways of having instantaneous data on things like that, so that we're not waiting to go and getting information. That information will be available to the school board and to the administration in an instant, or at least within a week, so that we have a data dashboard that you can tap into to see some of the answers to these questions. And that we can stay up to date on how we're moving, how we're progressing towards the board goals. That's something that we haven't had. I always have to, and they all know this, and it's just the way it is. And it's a lot of districts. I have to go to somebody, one of them, say, can you go get me this data? And then you have to go to somebody else, and they have to get the data. And there's a lot of things that we need to be able to track on the fly, so we can have better decision-making opportunities. And so that's one of the things behind the scenes that we're doing. That will be also hopefully available for you at some point by the end of the year, I hope, so that you can actually go into the system and track things on your own also, without you having to come to me for me to go to other people to get the information for you. So.
Thank you.
Shimana? Number 7.
Members of the board, one of the things we've talked about is continuity of services, so that our parents and our community feel welcome in our schools, and then when somebody needs information or assistance, they get that assistance in a uniform manner, no matter what school they walk into, no matter what office they walk into. So this data point speaks specifically to that. We've done some preliminary baseline data on the schools. We have not done preliminary baseline data on our administrative offices, so that baseline data will be collected. And we will be looking at getting satisfaction scores, likely through the implementation of either a manual item or a handheld device of some sort. If you've ever been to the DMV, instantaneous feedback of that sort, so that we know the services that we're providing. We want people to feel welcome in our schools, especially our communities. We are part of our community, and they are part of us.
Number 8, Keaton.
Number 8 is improve special education services to students, parents, and school sites. We want to improve the efficiency of how services are provided. We actually surveyed our school administrators in the spring, and 31.8% of those schools felt like they were being supported. So that's something we want to really improve upon. We will also be surveying parents just on the IEP process and what services their child is receiving, and if they're satisfied with that. So that's something we're going to add to that as well. As you know, we're kind of restructuring our EDC administrative building to start providing these services.
So when you're saying that we're updating and stuff with EDC, and as far as updating, are we getting what do you mean by updating? Are we getting is there somebody that's contracted that's going to be coming in as a program, or how, are we just following what we normally follow?
Go ahead.
We're actually working just on the administrative side of our special education department. So we are bringing in some support there to help, like a director, coordinators, things like that, to streamline all of our services to the schools to make them more efficient and provide the support that the schools are asking for.
And then this particular item is actually assessing that, so that we're continually assessing whether the services that we're providing to parents and to school sites and to students is getting better. So it's about that continuous improvement. So we will also have, for example, when somebody has an IEP, we want to survey them about that process. Did it happen timely? Was appropriate conversation? Were your needs, your questions answered? And then also assess parents and students about the implementation of that IEP to make sure it was implemented correctly, and also assess their satisfaction with that also. And then also at the school sites, because our special education department services obviously all the school sites, and they support them and train them, etc., administration, teachers, and we want to continually assess that to make sure that we're growing with satisfaction. Probably not going to be 100%. Nobody ever is perfectly 100, but we can do much better, for example, than we assessed this spring. 31.8% of our own administrators not satisfied, or only 31.8% satisfied with the services that they were receiving. There's a lot of work to do, and that's why we're making drastic, significant changes there. It's not discrediting all the work. It's the system itself that we need to do better in. It's not the people.
So this support service that we're talking about, like what I was asking, is it's our own support service, or is it somebody coming in from the outside and doing the support service for us?
This is an RFP that you guys approved
I know, but
recently. Yeah, so it's a company that we already use with respect to our ancillary staff, and they provide supports with managerial services also for special education. So we're tapping into that. And it's just a few administrative positions. It's not teachers. It's not ancillary staff specifically as far as the ones that we currently have. It's our current staff staying in place except for administration. That's where we're getting the extra outside support.
Okay, thank you.
And so if I could elaborate on that, because I'll do it again like I did last time, it's just that there is this false narrative going around saying that we're getting rid of all the special education staff. This is absolutely not true. And so people can keep saying that until they're blue in the face. This is not true. But we are doing things differently administratively, absolutely. And as you can see by that 31.8% satisfaction score, drastic changes are needed.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing. We want to improve and we want to help students.
Wanted it to be clarified as far as the support service.
Mr. Long and Mr. Hyatt, I'm thankful, first of all, that we're adding special education to our Elevate 2025 strategic plan. I totally agree with you that we're just servicing our children that need the most critical help for these services. So I appreciate us as a board also for continuing to really look at this and make some changes. As dramatic it may be, our children deserve that. So my question is, once we have that assessment and we see where we are and where our students, our staff are, and what they need assistance on or improvements that need to be made, I would really like to see more training for parents on the rights and about their IEPs and the processes of those, because I know at one time we used to have those kind of trainings for them, and they used to just have it here at EDC, and then as a board we said, why are we letting parents just come here when it's difficult for some of our parents? So they started kind of going out into the community to do those trainings, and it may not have been, I don't know even the attendance part of it, because I don't know how much information, again, that those parents did receive. So I think after the assessment or assessing it with these individuals coming in, I think that would be something that we could really start to implement again. But the other question I had is, are we fully staffed again in our schools for special ed teachers? I know some of them even have assistants, and including counselors and auxiliary staff, sorry.
Ancillary stuff, yeah.
Ancillary.
Ms. Benali, I'll let Kate touch on this also, but I think last time I checked a week or so ago, we were better staffed now than we've ever been with special education, so that's a positive. Exact numbers we can get to you unless Ms. Montagna knows them off the top of her head.
I don't have them off the top of my head, but if we do have some, it's very few. I'm pretty sure that classified staff, all of our assistants are hired at this point.
So teacher-wise, we have 100, how many special education teachers do we have?
114?
114 or 20,
Something
somewhere in
like
there.
that. Mhm.
And so even if it's less than 10% by far.
Right.
Usually we have about a dozen or
Wow.
so when school starts, and it's less than that.
Mhm.
So like I mentioned before, our recruitment efforts have gone really well over the last few years. And so we have very few positions left to hire. You got to figure we have almost 750, 800 teachers. And we have, less than 20 openings maybe across the whole spectrum, maybe less than that.
Right.
That includes special education. It's about 20-ish. Thanks.
So I'm going to talk about the last two. So improving the physical learning environment and infrastructure. We all know that the learning environment is essential for students' learnings. If they're comfortable, they have a adequate learning environment where they can pay attention and those types of things. But if there are issues, it's too hot, it's too cold, there's other disruptions going on at the school site, that is not good for the learning environment. And so we want to be sure that our work orders are getting completed timely. This is a repeat item, and what ended up happening was the initial data that was collected for this was extremely skewed. In looking at the work order system, it appeared that work orders were being closed without being completed, so that did skew the data. We have implemented a new protocol, and there will be a new baseline collected. In combination with that, due to the data errors of the last time, we're also going to implement a school site customer satisfaction survey. So when work orders are completed, the individual who originated that work order is going to get a satisfaction survey so that we know that those work orders are complete and the school is satisfied and the students have a good learning environment or have what they need to continue on. It's essential that we keep communication open with all of our school sites and make sure that all of our school sites are getting the support that they need. The last one is the improved utilization of financial resources, and one of the things I always say that money in and of itself does not solve problems, but the things, the goods and services it can buy can change generations, and that's what we're trying to do. And how do we do that? We need to be sure those funds are being spent timely, spent mostly in the classroom or on supports for instruction or our staff, and making sure that everybody in the system is getting what they needed when they actually need it. So our goals again are updated. We did see a decline in utilization. That is the influx of the CARES and ARP funding. That was substantial, and many of those are long-term goals related to HVAC systems and upgrades of the air quality within our school sites. I suspect that we will be back up near our goal very soon.
Mr. Long? I know, Giovanna, one time we were provided, I think it was like a 4-page GMC under construction sheet. Could we get an updated one of that to see what's been done and what was been fulfilled, and then also new initiatives that I know I brought some up to Mr. Hyatt and yourself about the schools in my area, but I also would like to request from the individuals or companies that we have that we contracted out that are in our schools, there's a contracted out for subs. I think we have a service that we use for subs, and then SFE, security. I don't know what other entities that are in our schools that if we can make sure they're fully staffed, and because the school year's starting and I think a report on that, is needed too, and starting off the school year. Bus drivers, transportation, how's all that, if we're, fully ready to go, and thanks.
Sure, we can do that. Thank you, Ms. Benali. Vice President Long, members of the board, this is what we took from you and put together as things that we can find trends and work towards and set targets for. Again, it's not all inclusive of all the things that we'll be doing. Like I mentioned, there's some data things that we're doing behind the scenes so we can collect data quicker. There's lots of tasks and action items that will be behind the scenes to support these objectives and your board goals. But at this time, again, we appreciate your efforts in giving us this information so we can compile it. We are asking for approval, or if there's any additions that you want us to, or deletions that you want us to do with respect to this proposed plan, and present it to you. So thank you for your time, and thank you for your questions.
One more comment, Mr. Long. I appreciate when we were doing the first work session on this, that Giovanna brought us the survey that was from parents and even students and community members. So we listened, we looked at your concerns, and I think that shows in this also, that this isn't just coming from administration or us. This was actually documentations from a survey, that we had a very good results that were brought in. So I just wanted to mention that also from this.
And also anecdotal. You obviously are in your communities and you're hearing things, and so you've been able to tell what's a true concern and what's happening that's a more prevalent concern, or on the opposite side, the things that are also going well, and so that we can continually do those things that are keeping those positive things going. Thank you.
With that, board members, what is your pleasure?
Motion to approve Elevate 2025 strategic plan.
Okay.
Second.
Motion's been made by Michael Schaaf and second by Priscilla Benali to approve or Elevate 2025 strategic plans. Roll call. Joan?
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Benali,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen,
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes. Thank you, board members. Let's go down to action, new business, B, approving signatory authority for certain individuals to sign documents, contracts, and all that on behalf of the district. Board members? Or Giovanna?
Sure. Vice President Long, members of the board, just a brief about this is that the board retains all authorities that it has always had. What this does is delegate to a few select individuals the day-to-day activities of the school district. These include signing purchase orders, signing banking documents, making banking transactions, issuing paychecks, those types of activities. If we were not able to do that, we would not be able to do day-to-day activities. This doesn't change anything to do with RFPs or bids that are brought to the board, contracts that are brought to the board. This doesn't amend any of those authorities.
Giovanna, is there anybody new on here?
There is. So Mr. Houston, J.R. Houston, who is in our business office department, he is brand new this school year, and I should bring some of the staff down so that I can introduce them to you guys. And also we have some new buyers in the procurement department. So we do have Gregory Houston is new to us this school year, and I was trying to Brianna Kessner. Did I say his name wrong? Oh, Gregory Hudson, and I've known his mom forever. But yes, there are a few new people on the list this year.
Thank you, Giovanna. With that, Mr. Long, I'd like the motion to approve.
Okay, thank you, Giovanna.
Second.
Motion by Priscilla Benali to approve the signature designation and financial signature designation on behalf of the district and second by Michael Schaaf. Roll call, Joan.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Benali,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen,
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes. With that, board members, I believe we've completed our business meeting for today. What is the pleasure of the
Mr.
board?
Vice President, a quick note, real quick, please. With the newly elected board member positions and stuff taking effect in our next meeting, I wanted to just make sure that I extended my hand of gratitude for your leadership as our board president these past years, and I appreciate the things that you've done for our district, and for the kids in our district, and as a board member, I appreciate your leadership. I don't know if any of the other board members care to share their feelings on that regard as well before we make a motion to adjourn, but I appreciate you and I thank you for your service.
Thank you, Chris.
Ditto, I guess I could say, but yes, I appreciate all you've done for us, Sally.
Yeah, thank you, Michael.
You've done a fine job as president, and I'm glad to work with you and still working with you.
Oh, yeah.
You've done a great job as president. Thank you.
Kushin, thank you.
I'll make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Vice President.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Chris Mortensen and second by Michael Schaaf to adjourn the meeting. Roll call, Joan.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Ms. Benali,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen,
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes.
2:46.
We're adjourned, board members.